How does your product engage with audiences? When was the last time you watched a film opening that was targeted towards a dominantly female audience? Probably never, as most horror films, especially in the slasher subgenre, are targeted towards young males because of the power men hold in the hierarchy as well as the representation they receive in both villains and victims. To subvert the slasher horror genre, I decided to have a female actor as the main character in La Femme Fatale. This means that the demographic of La Femme Fatale is a young female audience of ages 18 to 30. Adding on to that, they are also women of color who are part of the A and B classes, meaning upper or middle social class. Why do people watch horror? Women of color from this demographic will be interested in watching my opening scene because it represents both their femininity and womanhood as well as their race and ethnicity, which is often denied and linked with femininity and delicacy. This is because women of color are usually stereotyped as masculine due to ethnic characteristics and features, which is inconsistent with the beauty standards of today that center around Eurocentric features which arise from white women as a result of colonization and slavery. Alongside our character being a woman of color, precisely a black woman, she is also part of the upper middle class as it is represented through the expensive perfumes and makeup. This encourages women of color, especially black women, to watch the film because they are able to view a powerful woman of the same depiction as them. Furthermore, middle and upper class women of color will be further gratified to the film because they can see themselves in the villain's shoes. Uses and gratifications theory. Why do people watch horror? Maybe you watch it to disassociate from stress or to find a common ground with other friends as you all scream frightened with the contents on the screens. This is where the uses and gratifications theory is involved. Uses and gratifications theory. Why do people watch horror? Maybe you watch it to disassociate from stress or to find a common ground with other friends as you all scream frightened with the contents on the screens. This is where the uses and gratifications theory is involved. There are 4 different categories in this theory that discusses the different motivators when watching a film. However, only 3 apply to the film opening. The first category is diversion. This is when an individual watches the film to cope with stress and escape from real-life worries. Not only does this conform to the horror genre as it captures all attention that negative thoughts are difficult to creep on, but it also makes up for the lack of satisfaction in work or personal life representation and issues. Other than diversion is personal identity, where the audience uses characters they identify with to help them make life decisions, as well as express their identities in ways that they may have been denied before. In our film opening, many women of color and black women can identify with the main character being a woman of color, therefore will be motivated to watch the film as there is presentation of women of color in power in hand with femininity, which is rarely seen and often denied in the horror genre, specifically the slasher subgenre because most villains tend to be white men. Similarly, the third category that can be applied to our opening scene is personal relationships. In behalf of the representation of women in color, this can enhance and generate friendships regarding women of color because the representation is a way to bond and find a common ground. This mostly applies to women of color who are into the horror genre and enjoy slasher. I conducted 3 types of surveys to better understand how our opening scene engaged the audience. The first 2 are on Google Forms where I requested the viewer's age, gender, and ethnicity as well as their thoughts on the film. According to my findings, the majority of my audience, 80%, were young women of color between the ages of 17 and 20. Furthermore, nearly half of the audience were black women, demonstrating that the ethnic representation in the opening scene entices women of color and black women to watch femme fatale. Only 14.3% were men, indicating that our film has a niche audience that is drawn to the feminine aspects. Surprisingly, due to the use of high-end perfumes and makeup, 100% of the viewers are from the middle to upper social classes as anticipated. In addition, most voters said that the film's depiction of black women in positions of power encouraged them to keep watching it, as did other horror conventions such as The Bloody Knife. An astounding 80% said they would recommend this opening scene to other women of color, indicating that this representation compelled the audience to share it with other friends and family members who are women of color, thereby fostering personal relationships that I discussed during the uses and gratifications theory. Most people did not have an opinion on how to better engage the audience with the film. However, some active members believed that adding cultural items would have given the villain more power. In my second survey, I focused on questions related to the theory of uses and gratifications. According to the responses, the majority of the audience would watch La Femme Fatale as a diversion to escape from reality, which conforms to the horror genre, as the horror genre is typically watched as a distraction. Other responses included personal identity as it relates to the character, such as ethnicity, social class, or gender. However, I was taken aback to see a niche surveillance response, which is to seek information through our scene. Finally, 100% of the respondents indicated that the presence of a character of a similar race or ethnicity would entice them to watch a film, demonstrating how having a black woman as the protagonist in the film engages the mass audience. While the first two surveys were conducted using Google Forms, the final survey was conducted using Snapchat, a social media platform. When conducting surveys, I decided to use a variety of platforms in order to reach a larger audience and receive more reliable responses. I did a thumbs up and down vote on Snapchat to see how the audience reacted to the film. During the survey, I asked about various shots and horror conventions we used to see how the audience interpreted these messages. The majority of the props and shots adhered to the horror genre or a feminine theme. However, some people voted against the red scribbling on the men's faces and did not seem to understand the horrific message that we wanted to convey in the film. There are two common ways for films to be distributed as a real media text, either through independent routes or cinema to be able to reach the target audience. For my first plan to distribute my film, I would choose the traditional independent route by signing to a major international film festival such as Sundance or Toronto, particularly where women of color and marginalized women can easily access it. After presenting it through the film festival, I would approach Netflix and ask if it is possible to dispense my film on their app. This would reach a large international audience, therefore would ensure that my target audience, consisting of young women of color who are in the upper middle class category, watch the film. As well, Netflix is a known platform with over 617.4 million Netflix viewers worldwide. So having this popular Netflix distributing my film would ensure my target audience of watching the film. Adding onto that, Netflix diversifies their product, hence individuals using different devices such as PlayStation, mobile phones, laptops, and iPads can still access the film through Netflix. Not only does Netflix reach a global audience, it also reduces piracy by using technologies called DRM and watermarking, avoiding the viewer from screenshotting or screen recording to distribute illegally on other platforms. For reference, in my research I looked into the Conjuring film that was distributed onto Netflix to gain a larger audience, particularly in the religious subgenre. This takes the Livingstone and Lot theory into consideration, saying that it reduces piracy and avoids copyright when the film is released internationally at the same time. Plan B is through cinema. Although the sales agents can distribute my independent film to the cinema, this may not be possible if I do not generate enough sales through the film festival, therefore have appointed to a second backup plan. Throughout this plan, I will send my completed film to a studio where they can make a license agreement with a distribution company. This distribution company will then determine how many copies of the film to make and which theaters to screen it at. This will benefit my film since it is of the slasher horror genre, which is mostly seen in cinemas like the film Scream that was distributed in theaters first. On the other hand, this will decrease viewers because of the restricted age group for horror films, which is 18+, meaning individuals under 18 years old won't be able to access the film unless it is distributed through other platforms like Pluto TV and Paramount+. But this will be difficult because it will largely depend on which distribution company you are signed with. Contrastingly, Netflix cannot regulate younger demographics from watching 18-plus films on their website because it is through their own or parents' access. Therefore, this demonstrates the rules and regulations theory because Netflix can gain a larger audience due to having little control since it is online, whilst the cinema will have a limited audience because of the age regulation rules that prevent and restrict individuals younger than 18 to watch the film. Going in hand with the rules and regulations theory is the power media theory, which suggests that the mass media may achieve dominance by reflecting the views of the top distribution companies onto the audience who have less power. Due to the imbalanced power structure, this can be helpful as it injects new beliefs and ideas for the audience related with feminism and women in power. However, this can also backfire as people are used to victimizing women, therefore watching a woman in power may not be pleasurable and discourage individuals from watching it. This creates a fragmented audience, which is division of audiences into smaller groups due to the variety of media examples. So older individuals can access the film at the cinema whilst younger individuals can access it through Netflix, maximizing profit and reducing risk. A great film distribution must have good marketing to make that happen. For this reason, I would distribute film posters across billboards and theaters. As well, I would use YouTube to post the trailer and opening scene of the film so it can easily be watched and engaged with through comments, likes, and shares. Since social media plays a huge role in the feminism movement, I would use apps such as Instagram and Twitter to promote the film by using common feminine and horror internet slang, like kill all men, that will relate and capture to my wanted demographic, as well as going live so the audience can get to know the characters on a more personal level. In spite of Snapchat, I will use it to post snippets of the film as teasers to keep the audience on edge before watching it and create filters that relate to the killing of men.